everybody! I am Ashley, a mom of 5, a doula, birth photographer, and placenta encapsulation specialist, and I have attended dozens and dozens of births over the last 5 years. As such, I have quite the insight into how to develop a spot-on birth plan that is going to come across clear, concise, and the ways that you can help make sure that it's taken seriously by the medical staff that is going to be assisting you. So for a little background, my first baby was born without a birth plan in the hospital, and I ended up with an epidural. I did not want an epidural, but my husband was gone with the Marine Corps and it was just kind of a hot mess. My second baby, I managed to have her unmedicated in the hospital. I had a very thorough birth plan, called in all the staff ahead of time, we went over everything, but as soon as she was out and I was pretty stuck to the bed, everything went downhill. And in hindsight, I realized what mistakes I made. My last 3 were all born at home. When you have a midwife, is a little bit less imperative to create a full-blown birth plan because you are having such intense one-to-one care. They normally have a pretty good idea of what you want without you needing to write it all out. Let's jump on in. And if you can see my pile of laundry right here, just ignore it because I have 5 kids. So as a doula, one of the biggest things that I work on with my clients is their birth plan, understanding their birth preferences, their options, and how we can work to make sure that those things happen even if their birth doesn't quite go as planned. My biggest recommendation is to keep things short and concise. You want to be thorough enough that you are understood in your preferences and nothing important skipped over, but you don't need to talk about things that only apply to you. In your birth plan, you need to focus on the things that the staff around you is going to need to know so that they can serve you better. So if you are planning to wear your own clothes, yeah, you need to know that that's an option, and ahead of time you need to pack what you're going to wear in your bag, but does it need to be on your birth plan that you're handing to your nurse and your midwife or doctor? Not really. When you skip adding those things to your birth plan, it helps them to focus on the key points that they need to understand so that they can better serve you. That means things like I said, I'm gonna wear my own clothes. I want to listen to this kind of music. Things like that aren't necessarily important. You can set that up without the nurses or OBs or midwives needing to assist you in doing so. Next, know your options. It's hard to create a thorough birth plan that's going to be taken seriously when you don't know what you're in for. Know how to word things in a way that the staff will clearly understand it, but will shorten things down without being redundant. Next, it is crucial that you are clear in what is most important to you. I typically recommend to my clients picking out like 4 or 5 of the absolute most important, this is not going to change regardless of what happens, choices. Put them in bold, highlight them, whatever you need to do to make sure that they are clear and their eyes are drawn straight to those points. For some of my clients, that means certain medications that they don't want, things like that. Now, you also don't want to be redundant with things. If you are sitting there and saying, I'm going to choose that I don't want the routine Pitocin that they give postpartum. If you say, I don't want it unless you think it's medically necessary to your provider, they believe that it is medically necessary. They believe that this is the safest choice, and that's hospital protocol. So when you're saying, unless you think it's medically necessary, you are putting the choice back into their hands. It's very easy for them to say, okay, I think it's medically necessary now. Alternatively, you could say, I'm declining prophylactic Pitocin postpartum, which means I'm declining having Pitocin just in case I bleed too much. And to add to that, if you're open to receiving it, you feel like you're bleeding too much, write on there, I am open to discussing receiving it should a legitimate need arise. So that tells your provider, okay, if I see that she's bleeding too much, the placenta's really just not coming out, it's coming out halfway, then they're going to say, hey, look, this is what's happening, I kind of think you actually need it, what do you feel about the situation? And they're gonna ask you, and then you can say, yeah, go ahead, or you can say, nah, try something else, because they do have other options available to you as well. So that is really helping to make sure that you are being taken seriously, that all choices are being redirected back to you, and you're the one empowered and in control of your birthing experience. Another thing I highly recommend is to print off multiple copies of your birth plan. Yeah, you can go in with a handwritten birth plan, it's not the end of the world, but I really do recommend typing it if you can, and then printing off multiple copies. Highlight or write in bold the most important pieces, and then you can can have one next to the computer where the nurses come in and do charting. You can have one given to your OB or midwife, and then you can also have one for you and your partner to reference. Should anything come up, if you are sleeping and they come in and then ask your partner, hey, what about this? It's really easy for them to pull up your birth plan and reference what you said you do and don't want to happen versus having to interrupt your probably very short needed nap to ask you something that was redundant and on the birth plan. One of the things that I did for my second hospital birth that I highly recommend doing is to call in my nurse, the baby nurses, and my provider as soon as possible to go over the birth plan one by one. We sat down and said, this is what I want. I don't want this. I don't want this. I do want this. I want to make sure this happens. I want to use the tub. I want to use the shower. I am only consenting to intermittent monitoring unless baby is showing like massive issues. Then I asked him to sign it. I said, okay, do you consent to all this? And he nitpicked a couple little things which we compromised on. Then he signed it and he agreed to it. I had his confidence that he was going to do everything in his power to make sure that that happened. Now, where I messed up, shift change happened. She was born at 10:30 in the morning. So around 7, when I was really deep into labor, shift change happened. I got a new nurse, I got new baby nurses, everything. When my nurse came in the room, they briefed her on everything. She had a copy of my birth plan right there and available to look at. What I forgot to do was brief the baby nurses, or ask my nurse to brief the baby nurses on what I did and didn't want to happen. The fact that I wanted to delay the newborn exam, and the fact that I wanted to do skin to skin as soon as possible, as long as possible. As soon as she was out, they whisked her away to the warmer, way across this huge room, and didn't bring her back to me for 45 minutes. And I kept saying, can I have my baby back? They just kept pushing it off, saying, oh, we're just gonna do one more thing. Oh, we're just gonna weigh her. We're just gonna do this. And so I missed out on my entire golden hour of bonding and skin to skin and establishing breastfeeding and everything. And that was ultimately what drove me to choose home birth for the next 3 births. I definitely recommend bringing multiple copies and putting one of the copies on the warmer, even if it's just the baby care section that says immediate skin to skin for an hour uninterrupted as long as baby's healthy. Delay the newborn exam or do it on your chest. They can do it on your bed. I know most hospitals use the warmer as the scale. Aside from that, they can do pretty much everything on the bed with you, but you have to advocate for that. So if you have a portion, even if it's just the baby care portion, set it on the warmer. When the baby nurses come in, that's the first place they look. They see the warmer, make sure everything that they need is present and ready to go. When they see your birth plan there, they can glance over it really quick and be on the same page without having to say a word. That means everyone that comes in your room, there's less chatter, there is less questions to bother you as you're getting ready to birth your baby. You can really stay in the zone and have a more peaceful experience. Now, so you have a great birth plan, everything's ready to go. How do you make sure that you're taken seriously? This is a huge concern for so many people, and why so many women are afraid to come in with a birth plan anymore. One of the biggest things, keep it short and concise. Don't sit there and be like, I'm gonna snack on this. You can say on there, I want the freedom to eat and drink. You don't really need to ask. It's your body. They're not gonna come in and snatch it out of your mouth if you decide to eat a granola bar, etc. and so forth. But to make sure that you're taken seriously, it is so important to stand beside your birth plan. Keep it just loose enough where you have some wiggle room. You know, you don't know if you're gonna want to use the shower or a yoga ball or whatever. You can say on your birth plan, I'd like the freedom and the option to labor how blah 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 blah. I would like these available in my room. But don't say, I'm going to labor with a squat bar. You don't know that. If you word it to say, I would like a squat bar, a peanut ball, etc. available in my room for me to use for pain management, you're going to be taken a little bit more seriously. I also recommend when you get questions asked to you that are on your birth plan, refer back to it. That way they know you're serious. So if they say, hey, do you want an IV? You can say, if you can please refer to my birth plan, it references my choice on there. Refer back to it constantly. And then it becomes second nature where they come in, they look at it, they will probably run it by you and say, hey, on your birth plan it says this. Do you want that to happen? Do you not want that to happen, etc. And you can say, yeah, no, hey, I changed my mind, whatever. And it's fine to change your mind. You can change your mind as much as you want. But if you want to be taken seriously, really thoroughly, have a heart-to-heart with yourself, understand what kind of birth experience you want to have and follow that. So if you say, hey, I want to be up out of bed laboring as much as possible, I want to use natural choices, blah, 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 and then you walk and you're like 5 minutes after getting there, you decide you want an epidural, they're probably not going to take your birth plan as seriously. Sticking to your birth plan is one of the easiest ways to make sure that it's taken seriously. It becomes second nature where the nurses and the doctors will come in and they'll glance at your birth plan and then probably just run it by you and say, hey, on your birth plan it says you don't want this, or can I just verify that with you? And then you say, yep, that's right, that's what I want, or that's what I don't want, whatever. Now you also can, on the back of your birth plan, say like, in case of cesarean, in case my baby has to go to the NICU, etc., and have your choices listed on there. That way it doesn't seem like you're just putting all your eggs in one basket, assuming you're gonna have an amazing birth. You have those backup options and you've already gone through the motions, you've already looked through your options, and you know what you want should those situations arise. For an emergency cesarean, you could say, I want a clear drape, I want the drape lowered, I want skin to skin in the OR. They can still do that as long as baby looks healthy when they come out, they're crying, whatever. They can absolutely do skin to skin in the OR. They can help you breastfeed in the OR. They can do delayed cord clamping. It's just a matter of you knowing that those are your options, and then in the heat of the moment, remembering to bring that up and to advocate for it. And that's another great reason to have a doula present. We never step out of that role. We're constantly thinking about the options and what's going to happen, and a lot of the times we can kind of tell when things are starting to trend down towards possibly needing to head to the OR. And as such, we are so well versed in all of the options that you have available to you in the operating room, in the NICU, etc., where we can make sure that those things are advocated for and we can remind you. We help make sure that you have the space to grieve your birth experience, to grieve the fact that things aren't going the way that you originally hoped. Then shift gears and focus on how can we keep this as close to the original plan as possible. If we've previously gone over it in a prenatal visit, then we know it's available on this paper right here, it's printed out, it's ready to go. So as soon as the provider comes into the room, often maybe with the anesthesiologist, if you have some specific questions, it's a really easy gateway to advocate for those choices and to have it all on a list right in front of them so you don't forget anything. They can sit there and go down the list and say, yes, 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 I can do that, and I'm not sure about this, and that gives you the opportunity to really, I hate to say negotiate, but a lot of times you do kind of have to negotiate and really advocate to get as close to that experience as you possibly can. In the OR, a lot of the times it's up to the anesthesiologist because they're the ones keeping you comfortable and it's considered their OR. A lot of people assume that it's the OB's OR. Really, you have to run most things by the anesthesiologist first. Make sure that your partner is well versed in your birth preferences. Make sure that they know how to reference back to it and know how to help you advocate, that they are mentally strong enough to know how to say no, to understand that they don't have to explain themselves. They don't have to explain your choices. You don't have to explain your choices. No is a full sentence. I hope that these really help you in your journey as you prepare for your birth and during your birth experience. I am going to make another video talking a little bit more in depth about the options that you have for a hospital birth and some resources that you can use to study up on your choices to really understand the kind of birth that you want to have. I hope this video finds you well, and I hope that it's helped you in the smallest way to understand how important having a birth plan is and how to make the most effective one that you possibly can. Until next time, guys, bye!